Welcome to the FanDuel running back analysis for week 6. I'm Jason Gilbert, JGilbo11. With me is Justin Elick at Big Illy 42. Taking a look at some running backs this week, and kind of a week it looks like we're going to be paying up for most of them because not a lot of value, but you do dig down to some cheap guys. But first one here, DeMarco Murray, you're looking at obviously a great matchup against the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much anytime you're facing the Browns, you find yourself in a pretty good spot here. But, I mean, Murray's been just crazy consistent this year. 16.2 FanDuel points last year, but last week, 137 total yards. But that 16 points was the lowest that he's had in any game so far this season. And, I mean, his touches have actually gone up. I mean, earlier in the season, you and I were talking about, he's getting a solid workload and he's being productive with the touches he's getting, but he wasn't getting, feature back type of numbers as far as touches, 25 plus and things like that. But I mean, over the last 2 weeks, he's just seeing a huge increase in his touches, and 27 and 33 in the last 2 weeks, 7 carries inside the 10. Pretty much he's the only guy looking inside the 10. I think Mariota had a carry inside the 10 also, but so I mean, he's the guy in the goal line. He's the guy between the 20s. He catches multiple passes per game. He's got a really solid floor, and we've seen 2 touchdown upside from him too.
Yeah, he's definitely a solid play, and as you mentioned, I mean, we were talking about like Derrick Henry was getting kind of worked in a little bit. Now that's taking a real back seat. Yeah. He's definitely a guy who can pay off that price tag. I mean, as you mentioned, 16.2 points. That was just solely based on yardage alone. So obviously a pretty good floor. LaShawn McCoy, a couple hundred cheaper, gets a home matchup against the Niners, who have just been god awful against running backs this season.
Yeah, the Niners, I was looking at the numbers and who they've given up big time games to, but Fozzie Whitaker, Christian Michael, Ezekiel Elliott, David Johnson, obviously the last 2 guys, they can run for 100 yards against anybody, but you let Fozzie Whitaker run for 100 yards on you. Christian Michael is emerging as the guy we thought he was, a year, 2 years ago, whenever it was. But either way, this is a horrible run defense. First week, they kind of shut down Todd Gurley, but, even with that, they're still ranked 23rd against the run this season. And, I mean, that was a completely dominant performance. I think Gurley had like 40 yards total on that. So, you take that away, and this is easily a bottom 5 run defense. And, McCoy and the Bills, big team total, 25.5, which seems kind of strange considering this is a team that is hardly scoring any points in any matchup this season. So, that right there is very telling. And the only consistent option they've had has been McCoy. So I think he's just going to continue to get a huge workload, and not quite the workload that we were seeing from a guy like DeMarco Murray, 18 carries last week, but 150 yards. And, I mean, he's just found a way to get right around 100 or more yards each week, getting red zone looks. And, I mean, I just don't expect much resistance from this 49er defense. I think he's a safe option, but he's got quite a bit of upside here.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, you look at this matchup, you look at the spread and the total, and everything kind of checks out in terms of that department. Workload has been there. Jordan Howard, you also give an honorable mention here too at 7,700. Not quite the value that we've been seeing at the last few weeks. It took a big jump last week, but obviously 7,700 this week. Is he just kind of more of a step down from these 2 guys?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think he's necessarily a step down. Like, if you need the difference in salary, I think he's just as good of an option. But, I think that Murray, with his big role in the passing game, is a little bit safer. He's got a little bit higher of floor. But, I mean, I saw a stat that Howard's been on the field for 90% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks. Only had 16 carries last week, but did have 3 catches, 45 yards, and a touchdown. I'm pretty sure 2 of those catches went for 0 yards because I think the touchdown he scored was 45. But either way, I mean, Brian Hoyer looks good. The team is moving the ball. And, I mean, I saw 7 missed tackles each of the first 2 weeks for him. In the full workload. So, I mean, it's not like this guy is a fluke. I mean, he looks really good, and he's on the field for every single play nearly. So he's a really, really safe option.
Yeah, volume alone, you definitely got to like that. Looking at GPPs, you're talking to Ezekiel Elliott, who 8,100. Packers defense, I think, is a little bit misleading in terms of the rush defense, and I think it looks like you agree as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their numbers. Football Outsiders has them ranked number 2. You look at, non-advanced metrics, just straight statistics numbers are giving up less than 2 yards a carry. And, this is a team that looks on paper like they've been dominant against the run. But then you look and see who they faced. TJ Yeldon, Adrian Peterson for part of a game, didn't seem to be 100%. Dwayne Washington, Theo Riddick, Bobby Rainey, Orleans Darkwa. those are the guys that have faced this team. And obviously, you face these all essentially career backups and plus a banged up Adrian Peterson, you're probably going to have pretty good numbers against the run. And, the way that this offensive line looks for the Cowboys, I'm banking on Zeke Elliott being able to run against any defense because, I'm obviously partial to this. I feel like my Bengals have a pretty good offensive line or pretty good defensive line, one of the best in football, and they got absolutely dominated last week by this offensive line. So the Packers aren't nearly the defensive line the Bengals are, and I keep seeing people say that they're not on Elliott this week because the Packers' run defense has been good, but I'm just not buying that it's anywhere near as good as people think, and I think Zeke's in for another big game.
You also use a word here called hog mollies.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is a hog molly? I've never heard that before.
I'm not sure what a hog molly is, but I know I'm trying to think of who says it. I want to say that it's Gruden that says it. But it's always a reference to, the big offensive lineman up front kind of paved the way for whatever the running back. And I got to I'll find it and I'll tweet it who says that. But there's some broadcaster that says that all the time. He says the big hog mollies up front. It seems like a Gruden thing, like the whole just nonsense that he spews because he just seems like he's drunk all the time. But
you got to love Gruden.
Yeah. He knows what he's talking about. I just wish he didn't say it. I wish he'd just write it down so we didn't have to listen to him. But
well, you know what? After listening to Harold Reynolds for the last few days and watching the Dodgers, anyone's better than Harold Reynolds.
Oh yeah, you're not kidding. Twitter's a fun place when Harold Reynolds is on TV, though. I'll tell you that. That's the place. But even if you hate baseball, just go on there and just listen to people bash him. It's incredible. I join in. I always do.
Yeah. Christine Michael, you talk about next, 7,400. Definitely a swerve off the passing game here.
Yeah, it's a situation where we're seeing now that potentially severe wins in this game which could kind of keep people off Russell Wilson and company. But the good thing about the Seahawks offense, as it kind of has been for the entire time that we've had Russell Wilson, or so five or so years now, it's been, run first, pass second, and they do have weapons now. Jimmy Graham's finally starting to pay off as, the tight end that we used to see in New Orleans. You got Doug Baldwin. They're coming off of a bye week. Everybody's pretty healthy except for Thomas Rawls, but that's a good thing for Christian Michael, who's going to just see a big workload again. And, he looks good. And this is a Falcons defense that another one that I'm really not a believer in. We saw them last week look absolutely dominant against the Broncos. Then we saw what the Broncos offense looked like against the Chargers last night without their backup quarterback with Simeon under center. And maybe we're realizing that, the Broncos had the big one big game on offense. Then people are kind of figuring them out now, and they're pretty predictable. So I don't think Atlanta's defense is nearly as good as what we saw last week. And I just think that Michael's going to get a heavy dose, especially if that wind is blowing, 30, 40 miles an hour. There's no reason to take chances down the field. So I expect him to easily get 20-plus touches here.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think, with everything that's kind of situated into Michael's favor this week, that matchup, it's perfect. And as we talked about a little bit before the show, if that win does keep a lot of guys off, obviously Michael will take a tick up in ownership, but I'm still not going to be completely fading the passing game.
No, not me either. And I hope that everyone else is. We'll be talking about them a little bit in a couple of these other pods, but I think there's definitely still some value to be had with that passing attack.
Yeah, definitely. Value running backs, you're looking at Frank Gore. This is a week where, you're forced to kind of talk about a value guy, and Frank Gore is like trying to jam something in here.
Yeah, he's kind of one of those guys you pick by default. As I was writing this article, I'm looking down, and I don't particularly like any of these value plays as far as cash game options. Especially after last week, we saw plenty of guys be big disappointments. But Frank Gore, among the guys who are similarly priced here, just makes a lot of sense. The only other guy you'd consider, and I was kind of waiting on status for him to see if he's likely to play, is Jonathan Stewart. It's the same price, $6,300. As of a couple of days ago, it seemed like he was iffy to play, but now it looks like he might suit up. So he's a viable alternative against that horrible Saints defense, but we'll see what his workload is. But either way, Frank Gore, never a flashy guy, never a sexy pick, but he's a guy that, he gets 15 to 20 touches a game, and he's just going to get you 60 to 80 yards. He's going to get goal line looks because there's no one in there in that offense to steal the goal line looks from him. So, Frank Gore, one of those guys you never feel excited about playing him. But, I mean, he scored in 3 or 5 games. The Texans are a team that's been shutting down the pass, but really, really bad against the run. So, if he can find the end zone here, get you 10, 12, maybe 15 points, then, I mean, he's easily paying off that tag.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the red zone, you look at that offense, the way it's constructed. I mean, it's really the tight ends that have the dominant advantage, but even them, it's not, terrific. So Gore's going to be a guy who is going to be used in the red zone that we wish we see it a little bit more, but at that price, I think it could certainly pay off. Giovanni Bernard, you're looking at here 5,700, more of a kind of game flow type thing with him.
Yeah, I mean, even I, as a Bengals fan, I'm not delusional enough to think that they're going to control the clock and dominate an offense by any means. This has been an offense that's had a lot of yardage so far this year, but unable to score in the red zone. You expect, much like it is most times that they play the Patriots, or most times a lot of teams play the Patriots, that you're going to get behind early and you need to play catch up. And as we saw in the Broncos game, Bengals got behind big, and Gio ended up with 9 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. You got Jeremy Hill's banged up, dealing with multiple injuries. Even if he plays, you expect he's not going to see a full workload. And like you said, with game flow, if the Bengals are down 10, 14 plus points here, you're not going to see Jeremy Hill pounding the rock either, because they're going to be throwing the ball down the field trying to make up for it. So I do think that a guy like Gio, he's a really sneaky high upside value play this week. And obviously his floor is not great, but if the game goes how Vegas thinks it'll go, and we all kind of think it'll go, Patriots favored by 9 points, then he's going to easily see 6 to 8 looks in the passing game. And he's elusive. The Patriots like to keep everything in front of him, so you don't imagine he's going to probably break a long one for a touchdown, but 6 to 8 catches underneath, you get 40, 50 yards, all of a sudden you got a decent floor.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you look at Bernard, I think 5,700, a much more reasonable price than some of those other value guys in that 6K range. And if you do think it's going to pan out in terms of playing, sorry to you, but Patriots, chug on through and score 40 points. We could be seeing
tops. Come on,
a healthy dose of Bernard.
yeah. We I hold out hope that they'll compete in this one, but I mean, it's
all about the hog mollies. That's what it is.
Those hog mollies looked like crap last week against Dallas. So, not high hopes this week, but I do have high hopes for Bernard.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel running back analysis for week 6. Be sure to head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com. Check out our great tools and content. Be sure to keep an eye on Justin's Twitter feed so we can figure out what the hell hog mollies is.